Kuro, Child of Dragons, Episode 8, Shadows of the Deceased. Masanadi was deep in thought when his consciousness reanimated his motionless husk of a body. His head began throbbing, chest under fire from more than just your wayward slash, and his robes, well, they were in tatters, but what truly frightened him was what lay beneath. A jagged black line cut clean across his neck, clear down to his ankles, and surrounding it was, what? Soot? Dust? Coal? He didn't know. I would have died, Masanadi knew. Never in his waking existence had Masanadi felt the need to rely on the old ways, of which he and his previous master had unearthed. They had done the same back then, Masanadi recollected, as he walked over to the railing to gaze at none other than a familiar sight, that of a blackened sun, beaming up from a place he'd rather forget. Masanadi shivered, looking around warily, his gaze eventually falling upon a motionless child, flame still as present as ever, but perfectly still, as if in a trance. The demon of the dragon had been felled. Is this really the power of the dragon's blood? He had questioned just before it. He grimaced and then shook his head. This wasn't the time. There were more pressing concerns. Owl, the boy, and the Ashina. He straightened, shaking off the last of a headache. Owl, are you alive? Owl would slowly become conscious of his surroundings, first coming eye to eye with Masanadi, a sight to behold, he knew, and subsequently the blackened sun, or it appeared he did. The light that had threatened to overtake the blackness prevailed, and just as quickly as the great shinobi had glimpsed its magnitude, it had disappeared, and the room was once again alit, as it had been before. Masanadi gradually took his eyes off Owl and returned them to the boy. Wait, what happened? Owl eyed the motionless demon child, realization suddenly dawning on him. Is that? Oh, I see. Owl would pause, walking up to the two of them. It's a shame. I can't take credit for her handiwork. The two would share a glance before Owl is handed a blade that he is first hesitant to take hold of. The demon's sword, a devastating work of frayed steel, stained black and twisted in ways that very well should have compromised the durability of such a weapon. Even amid all the devastation that would befall them should they remain, a moment's wish to do nothing but examine the blade did strike the great shinobi's fancy. But no, the two shinobi knew it was time to go. Masanadi replied, still eyeing the boy. The Red Guard, the Sunken Valley clan, must be giving them a special kind of hell. Cannon fire could indeed be heard, not so very far away. No doubt, Al responded. Masanadi reached his hand to the flaming child, awaiting the grasp of one so subservient. We've held up our end up top, though Valhand and his division are under immense strain. The Ashina elite are a force we'd rather not contend with, should I be honest with you. How shall we proceed, Owl? Owl stood and gazed upon the setting sun, pondering the question. I concur. Without the assistance of the Red Guard, without their diversion, should we try to vacate the castle, we'll surely meet his warriors in full. Owl crossed his arms. Regardless, I would entrust your shadows to clear us a path. Can this be done? Though phrased as a question, it was most certainly not. The lone shadow lowered his eyes, undoubtedly pondering the faces of all those he knew, and all those he'd rather see remain among the living. Yes, but many will die. They'll be remembered. Owl laid a reassuring arm on Masanadi's shoulder before continuing. It seems a pact with the divine heir will be entirely involuntary. We will need time with him, but when we succeed, immortality will be ours, and with this offensive power of the dragon's blood, no one will stand a semblance of a chance against us. I, Ukanzaimon Usui, will see this reality brought forth. The two were in agreement. Masanadi, it seems I'll have a chance to rate your handiwork yet again. I'm counting on a good show. The shadow stood tall. As much as he knew his warriors would be against death itself, he had faith in their collective might. They'll do their duty, Masanadi spoke, and then grinned. For the dragon's blood. From a distance, one might see the strangest thing. A flaming demon child, reaching out and gently taking hold of his captor's hand with an almost human knowing, awaiting the direction of one most precious to him. Both shinobi turned to leave, the setting sun bearing witness to the last of their intrusion atop Ashina Castle. Although, as it turns out, this was not meant to be. Something would catch the attention of the lone shadow, and it sent a chill down his spine. At this point, focus is made for building the atmosphere of the dreamlike world that was previously stated to be the Accursed Lands. Demon Kuro was meant to slowly take in the world, starting at the place where the corrupted monk would normally be in the main Sekiro game, and emotionlessly, he'd get the impression to walk in the direction of the lone shadow that Masanari had conversed with. Giving Demon Kuro this point of destination would put pressure on the white lone shadow, and such worries were not to be concerned with. The path to himself was fraught with ample opposition. At this point, we introduce our first two-part boss of this world, Veteran Shadows. The first half of the health bar would have been purple, and the other half white. This distinction would signify the two lone shadows the Demon Kuro would fight. The first lone shadow would appear to Demon Kuro on the bridge, this being foreshadowed in a prior episode. A good bit of the episode Shadows of the Deceased was pretty well completed, but there are still some parts that would fall below my quality margin, of which I just left as is so you can see what I made. Introducing the boss fight, Veteran Shadows, and subsequently what comes next, the title of this episode, the boss fight, Shadows of the Deceased, which, might I add, was probably the most fun I've had in Sekiro since I battled those two bosses simultaneously towards the end of the main game. It may look like pure terror, but I was having the time of my life. With the purple and white lone shadows dispatched, the black lone shadow is all that remains. He is noticeably struck with fear given the fact that Demon Kuro strong-armed 3 opponents at once, but gives the fight his all before being deathblowed like the others. His final words, "Demented soul." The clearing is quiet, and the atmosphere of the world once again returns. At this point, I want to make it clear that Demon Kuro is not gaining any health buffs, or whatever we should call it, like he does in the overworld. Perhaps there was meant to be a feeling of exhaustion, or something to that extent, but this is not Kuro feeling this. It's meant to be shown as a somewhat alien expression, foreshadowing at its finest. Okay, you'll have to trust me on this. Demon Kuro has already resurrected once, so he is running on empty, let us say. Gritting his teeth, Demon Kuro would again start walking in the direction of his destination, but would stop. The camera would pan to the side, revealing a glowing blue-black shadow, poised to fight, behind him. The shadow would be glowing blue as a side effect of replacing ore into the water with a black lone shadow, but for all intents and purposes story-wise, a ghostly figure stands before Demon Kuro, and there is a notable pause. "Hey, you there. Are you the samurai Takaone spoke of?" You don't look at all as I remember." "It matters not. You will die now, as you should have died then." A boss fight would commence as the closing boss fight for this episode. This lone shadow would have one single health bar, and the name would read Lone Shadow Long Swordsman, the Deceased. The fighters would clash blades for a time, but ultimately the shadow would be felled. But before Demon Kuro would be able to enact the killing blow, Long Swordsman would call the fight, distancing himself. "Wait, you're not him. Curses this fog. Who's the blind one here? Hard to tell foe from onlooker. I had hoped to see that man again for myself, but it seems I'm out of luck. Perhaps I'll run into him again at some point." Demon Kuro has paused as well, after hearing the voice of his combatant. Even to the Demon of the Dragon, this fight did not seem one that needed to be won. This should be an indicator by now that Demon Kuro is not wild, let's say, but is clearly controlled by some intelligent force. He does not respond in the slightest to Long Swordsman with any human expressions. Well then, I no longer have reason for this. Lone Shadow Long Swordsman sheathes his blade, though notably, palms still clutching the hilt. Not making any more trouble between us. Demon Kuro is shown to ponder this, and answers by sheathing his own sword as well. A silence is left between the two, save for the furnace-like sounds of the burning flames wrapped around Kuro. "Isn't that something? I am grateful." Lone Shadow Long Swordsman released his grip. "What do you call yourself, Flaming Warrior?" Demon Kuro does not respond. "Not much to be said, I suppose. Your skills more than speak for any words. Relay me the same courtesy." Demon Kuro at last moves to leave, walking in the direction of where the last 2 shadows pulled from. "You're leaving then? Fair warning. The village around the bend, you will find it patrolled by more than your common ninja. The fangs of the night have long since made that dung heap their den." Demon Kuro would pause, looking back at the shadow one last time before leaving him behind. Long Swordsman could just be heard. "Wipe them out, the whole lot of them. And I might very well..." By the sound of it, the Lone Shadow gave off the impression that he would in fact join Demon Kuro, but it was barely heard. All that was left now was what remained ahead.